So just like always, we'll give it a few minutes to kick this off, and we'll jump right into it. We'll give it a few minutes for people to get in here. So Michael, what were you guys doing during that? Like, why were you guys on that ship?
So we were doing an operation, and they just happened to use that as extras. We were at the time they used Vieques, Puerto Rico for training, and they, I guess, bombed part of that island. I don't know if they still use it, but we're to do a workup for a MEU.
Yeah.
So we'd go down there, spend like 30 to 60 days training down there, just kind of getting ready for the MEU. And then we go back to Camp Lejeune, and then we deployed from Morehead City. So it's just a workup, just, 60, 90 days. So pretty good.
What battalion were you with at that time?
Well, they rolled the flag up, and I was in 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines at the time when I was with those guys. So it's good times.
Nice.
So the 8th Marines was part of that multinational peacekeeping force in the 80s from like 80 to about 85. So that was we were the regiment that lost those Marines in 1983. They were from actually 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, and I did time with 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines.
Okay.
So, yeah, good stuff there.
Well, it looks like we got about 35 folks in here, so we'll go ahead and get started. I appreciate everybody tuning in. This is live stream number 6 for us. We got a great panel tonight. Unfortunately, John from Alpha Charlie Concepts couldn't make it. Maybe he might dime in later. I don't know. But nonetheless, we got a special guest. We all go around the horn introducing. But our special guest tonight is a good friend of mine. I've known him for years. It's Michael. Michael served in the Marine Corps with me, but he's been in a lot longer than I have. But he entered the Marine Corps in 1981. He had some broken time, came back for the global war on terrorism, and he's subsequently retired. But I knew then First Sergeant Michael back in the day, and I was his company gunnery sergeant. But like I said, he's since retired. And he's also a retired Alabama state trooper for, was it 26 years?
Yes, 26 years.
Yeah, 26 years. But the big reason I brought him on tonight, and I'll when I introduce the topics, you guys understand this, is that he's coached high school track as well as some college kids. And he's got some very good insight on the differences between male and female athletes. So that is one of the reasons I brought him on. And like I said, when I introduce the topics, you guys understand.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next year, we got Dr. Christopher Larson, and he's been on all but one, I think, live streams. And he's a accomplished author. He's written many books on small unit tactics. And what we know him most notably for is he's the founder of the One Shepherd Leadership Institute, going on 40 years strong. But he definitely brings an expert opinion to our panels every time, and we're fortunate to have him on. All right. If you guys watch my channel for any amount of time, you know who this clown is. This is Bruce. YouTube handle, Bruce at CampArmaments. Bruce is like my right-hand man on filming YouTube videos. And big congratulations to him. He's earned his marriage campaign medal with Gold Star in lieu of second award. And he's actually joining us tonight on his honeymoon. So props to his wife for allowing him to do this with us tonight. So, but Bruce brings that civilian perspective to the chat with us. And, he's got an extensive history as an aircraft mechanic as well as private security. And just all in all, he brings a great perspective to the chat, and we're fortunate to have him tonight. And last but not least, we have Les, a.k.a. Pegasus Test on YouTube. Appreciate him joining on with us. He is a expert in logistics. He's got his own logistics company. So when it comes to moving ship from point A to point B, he's your man, subject matter expert. He's a Marine back in the early 90s. He's a combat veteran in Desert Storm, and just a wealth of knowledge. Great contribution to our panel tonight. So glad to have you on tonight, brother.
Hoorah.
All right, fellas. So that is our panel. So now to the questions of the hour. So the first one we're going to be talking about and kicking around. This is the reason I brought Michael on. Transgender athletes. So the whole reason why we're talking about this tonight, I recently watched a fight between a transgender woman and a real woman. And guys, it just pisses me off. Every single one of us in here has a daughter. Every single one of us on this panel has a daughter. And, I think this stuff is getting out of hand. The fight I watched, the female athlete was a far superior fighter, I might add. The real female, biological female, was a far superior fighter. Was landing blow after blow. It looked like a Rocky Balboa fight, where they like have their hands down here and they're just getting punched in the face over and over. That's exactly what I saw, and it just had no effect on the male fighter. Self-identified woman male fighter. And he ultimately ended up winning the fight, even though he just repeatedly got kicked and kneed in the face. And it's just, man. So we're going to kick this topic around. And like I said, I brought Michael on tonight to specifically talk this, since he has a wealth of experience dealing with training both male and female athletes. So with that being said, guys, that's our first topic. Second topic is going to be the General Milley alleged call to China. And allegedly, I got to stress, allegedly stating to them that he would give them a heads up if the Trump administration was going to launch an attack on them. That's what's came out recently in a Bob Woodward book. So we'll kick that around after we get done talking about this transgender stuff. So with that being said, guys, who wants to kick this off? I'll tell you what, let's kick it over to the professional here. Michael, man, it's your first time. You're the boot in this conversation, so you pick it up. Go ahead and give us a little bit of extra background on you, though.
So I do coach cross country and track and field. Right now, we're in our cross country season, and in my team, it's a high school team. I have 4 teams in one. I have a boys varsity team. I have a girls varsity team. I have a boys junior varsity or middle school team, and I have a girls junior varsity middle school team. So typically we start our summers off training as a group, but when you say male and female, the boys typically will run more than the girls, but they're all competitive athletes. But in my state, the state I'm in, we do not compete your boys against girls in cross country and track and field. So like I said before, we're in the cross country season right now. So there are some remarkable differences between boys and girls. Boys can handle a lot more, wear and tear on their bodies when it comes to cross country. There are some states, I think, they're allowing this transgender thing to take place. It hasn't happened in our state. If it has, I hadn't paid attention to it. Our association, I don't know what their stance is on it. So typically I can, train the boys a little harder than the girls. They're more delicate, that I've noticed. There's a lot of lower body injuries if you don't take it easy on them. So that's one of the things I noticed over the years. Outside of that, I think they both suffer from, I shouldn't say suffer, at some point when they're younger, you can have what they call growth plate issues if you don't watch it as a coach and take care of them. So there's a lot of things we do to prepare them, but I have never seen any of my girls that could run with the boys competitive wise, if that makes sense.
What you got, Doc?
Hey, Coach, can you expand on, I mean, do you have any background or insight as to why that is? I mean, I think it's a generally accepted axiom, and so therefore it's axiomatic, but why? Why?
Okay, I'm not a medical doctor. I don't know all the scientific things when it comes to the body, but this is one thing I noticed. My son ran for me for 3 seasons in cross country, ran 5 seasons for me outdoor and indoor. So the boys, around the 7th grade, the ones that come in 7th grade, by the time they're seniors in high school, they start to develop muscles. And I noticed that between their 9th and 10th grade year, I try to take real advantage of that and go in there and train them really hard, get them ready for the competitive high school years. The girls are different on hand. I noticed this when they start their female thing. A lot of coaches, they get upset because girls are going to change dramatically different than boys if they haven't done that, all their life in their training. You can upset that cycle by training really, really hard. I noticed that. I have some of my girls, I can tell the ones that are really working hard in the summer, they don't have a chest. If I'm just being graphic. I noticed that the girls that are very competitive on that, but they're still not as fast as the boys in any given sport like that. We don't compete. I don't think in the high school association I'm involved in, I don't think you'll ever have a girl that can go out there and, compete at the boys' level. They're looking at them, their bodies aren't made the way the boys are. I mean, just looking at a novice approach as just a track and cross-country coach.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, anecdotally, this isn't the end all be all. I just mean it as for example. I do know that extreme athletic pursuits, name one, doesn't matter. If you are one of those athletes that get down to just well below body fat, you're pushing yourself very, very hard, that this has an impact on the reproduction organs of males and females.
Yes.
A lot of people will tell you about the females, but it's true for males too. Like, seriously, it's a known phenomenon. The difference is that the men recover from it very quickly, and to my knowledge, they recover completely. Women tend to recover very slowly from this. We've seen this in combat too, in Afghanistan and Iraq, where women deployed into the mountains and did all this stuff and came back, and they were sterile. They, at 26, 28 years old, could not have children anymore. So they didn't recover at all. So, yeah, I mean, again, that's not the end all be all. That may not matter to some people, their reproductive organs and rights. But still, you think we would protect that at, we're talking children here, right? Middle school, high school. You think we would make efforts to protect that?
Right. We do protect that. So, like, the girls, in order for them not to break down as much, they don't do as much mileage as the young men. And I'm not one of those coaches that, I'm completely naive to the fact that, hey, there's certain training regimens that we do for the girls and the boys. The boys, by the time they're finishing high school, my son, when he ran for me, he was a competitive high school athlete. He went on to compete on the collegiate level. He was running anywhere between 90 to 115 miles a week. The girls, they can't handle that kind of mileage at that age. I would imagine when they got in college, they probably could. I don't really keep up with the girls that much when they're in college. They do a fantastic job. I have some young ladies that run for me right now, and put them up against, other young ladies, and they do really, really well. So we have to I protect that, say, hey, if they're starting to break down, I know how to manage and watch that. Like I said before, I'm not a doctor, but I know what things to look out for. We tend to have a lot of recovery runs after races, after hard training sessions. They tend to need more recovery. If you do it right, then the recovery can be the same, but they're not going to do those hard workouts like some of the guys do. The workouts are similar, but even with the same sexes, you'll have some that are recover a lot quicker, and they're going to train a lot harder than the other athletes. So, but to put a young lady up against a young man, like I said, I coach high school sports. It's not going to happen,
Well, I mean, so that just gives rise to another question then. And Michael, you can certainly take this. Anybody can. And I admit this is a bit of a slow underpitched serve, but let's question our assumptions. Guys, I'll back up for just a minute and tell you, I am a constitutional conservative. I am a tinfoil hat wearing. When it comes to human rights and the Bill of Rights, I wear my tinfoil hat. When it comes to financial, you'll find that I'm actually a moderate, not really going left or right. I'm pretty moderate when it comes to taxes and finances and stuff like that. And then finally, when it comes to social issues, I trend towards liberal ideology and liberal thought. So I'm sharing that with you. So let's question some of our assumptions. Look, sports and putting sports and academics together is really a fairly new thing. It probably goes back, just a little over 120, 130 years now. And initially there were no female sports. And then we finally had female inclusion into sports, but they were segregated. So let me ask this. Why? Why are they segregated? Why were they segregated a century ago?
Somebody else want to wait? So yeah. I would, this is just my own personal opinion, that if you had the young ladies competing against the young men on a high school level, they're probably not going to be a lot of young ladies that are going to win. At least in my sport, in college, when my son ran collegiately, the girls, they didn't move up to the 10K like the boys in cross country. They stayed at the 5K. The young men moved up to the 8K and the 10K. So I don't know if I can weigh in on this. I'm looking at your people that are kind of commenting on this. Somebody said, well, why don't we just create another category, an LGBT category? I don't know if that's possible. I'm not a part of our association. Would that help anything? I just saw that.
Coach, from a protection of the athlete's point of view, like Brent was giving the example of the MMA fighter that, biologically being a male claiming to be female had an unfair advantage. Do you think that would protect the female athletes by having a special category just for the people that are transgendered.
I mean, they bring that up. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm not for it and I'm not against it. I mean, but I think if I had a daughter that was competing on a high school level and she had to compete against boys, you know, that I don't know if are they fully transgender or are they claiming the titles so they can get in there and compete. There have been some states where that has happened, and the young lady said, "Hey, this is unfair. We're getting scholarships taken away from us. We're not capable of being on the team anymore." So that's a huge problem. When I'm training, I have a young lady I'm training right now. She's probably going to be a scholarship athlete. I don't want somebody to come in here, you know, that's claiming this and he's going to take that scholarship away from her. It's already hard enough to compete against the girls on that playing field, and it's not level. That playing field is not level even on the girls' side. She works really hard. She puts in a lot of training hours. I think last season as a freshman, she ran a 19:37 5K. The plan for her is to run a 17-minute, you know, and change 5K before she graduates from high school. But if I get a young man that comes in there, some of these young men in my state are running 14 and 15 5Ks. We haven't had a young lady in our state do that yet. I haven't seen them do that in any state. Can they run fast? Absolutely. But to compete with a boy for a scholarship, it doesn't make sense. If you bring a guy in there and he's competing on their level, yeah, he's probably going to take scholarships away. Some of the boys, even some of the slowest ones, if they ran on the girls' side, would come out, you know, on top.
No, I'm not like a track expert or anything, but I did watch a race or two of it was like the co-ed relays.
Yes.
And, oh my God. I mean, the difference between the male runners and the female runners. And I mean, we're talking like the best of the best, top tier, but there was no comparison. No, men were just like, if it was not a woman running against another woman, the man just went right on past him. I mean, it's not even a comparison.
Right.
So to have somebody, you know, maybe they're not the greatest male runner, but then it says, you know, assuming that they have, I don't know what right word here, good intentions, I guess, you know, they do want to become a woman or whatnot, and they drop down and now they're smoking some of the best, you know, hardest training female athletes. It's not right.
Yeah. And wow, I don't know. I guess going back to that thing, do we create a whole separate category? I mean, is it even possible? So,
well, we did it 100 years ago, right? Women said we want to come into sports, and we made all these reasons, we being society, not me. I wasn't alive 100 years ago. Don't listen to my daughters. I wasn't. And yet, you know, the establishment said, oh, well, women can't do this. It would injure them. It would be bad. Women cannot do all these things. But when they finally agreed, they said, okay, well, let's create a different category. Well, I don't see why we can't do that now. That's one option. But I do want to make a distinction, getting back to what Michael said. It's when we start putting other types of opportunities. It's convenient and easy for me to say financial reward, and certainly it does boil down to that. But I think it's greater than that. It's not just handing out money. We're handing out scholarships. For some students, this is how they're going to get to higher ed. It's how they're going to be successful through higher ed. It's a vehicle that gets them there. Very much like the GI Bill did for veterans ever since the end of World War II. And so I think when you start seeing that as a vehicle for self-improvement and social ladder climbing, right? Economic status ladder climbing, because you're the first person in your family to get a degree and you did it on a track scholarship. Well, all right, now hold on. Now you can see why people are getting a little bit upset about, hey, my daughter did all this work. She's poured her heart and soul into this. She's set all sorts of records at state level. And here comes a transgender, man with sexual dysphoria who says, hey, look, I identify as a woman, so I'm gonna run against your daughter and I'm gonna take that scholarship away. I think that's where we really start to feel an injustice. It's not just the trophies. It's not just the, a sense of fairness, although it's certainly that. It's a certain sense of justice, but particularly when it goes after the gusto, it goes after the throat financially, for a family that sees a potential for one of their children to advance. And then you get this. And for me, I think this is a real separation of, like, we're giving the MMA examples, but MMA is professional. And I see this as a real kind of separating force. What do we do in a professional world might look radically different than our solution sets in a, for minors, for students, for college level. I don't know.
Yeah, it might actually make more of a difference down at the younger level, because the kids, while they're at school age, their bodies are still developing. And, you have this big burly boy playing as a girl up against real girls. He can probably just through simple mass inflict injuries on these girls that they're going to live with for a long time. Coach, you might be able to speak to that better than I can.
So right now I have a young lady. She just asked me that. It's kind of interesting. Next Tuesday, she will compete against the boys. Now, we do that at times. There are girls that want to compete against the boys to make them run faster. She's not competing against the boys where she can win. She's competing against the boys where it helps her run faster. It gives her more drive. We've done that in the past. And I have actually had some of the faster girls, hey, go train with the boys, to pick up your speed, learn this, and they do really well when they come back and compete against the girls. I've seen that in basketball before where girls will run scrimmages against the boys' basketball team, and then they go play against another girl team, and they do fairly well. So, that's the only reason why they want to compete against the boys. Is not to go in there. They don't have this idea, hey, I'm going to go in there and beat the boys. It just more or less refines their game or refines their skill set.
So let me chime in here, because I actually took a few notes for the first time ever, because there's a few things that I want to say about this. And first of all, when it comes to why don't you have a category for LGBTs? Well, let's break that down real quick and not forget what that stands for. Placing lesbians with transgender, that wouldn't solve anything, would it? So we would want to keep lesbians competing with female athletes, because that's a sexual preference choice. That doesn't have anything to do with your physical body makeup. Same thing with gays, and same thing with bisexuals. Now, should we have a transgender category? That's possible. I don't think there's hardly enough out there for it to be able to fuel any kind of professional sport, or maybe even justify the cost for a high school sport. I don't know. Maybe someone else can speak to that as to, sir, how many transgender athletes have you ran into through your career and time, Michael? Teaching them. Could your school, without even saying what your school was, afford to have a sport for that? Maybe there's just not a demand for that. And I'll let you come back and answer that in a minute. Talking about women's bodies, when I grew up, there were books in school that talked about differences of women's bodies, and no one really seemed to object to it. You can pull up skeletal remains from however far back you want to go, and before you do any DNA checking on it, someone can tell you whether that's a male or female skeleton. They're just different. They're different from the onset. Without even getting into the psychological or physiological, looking at as simple as bone structure, they're different. I saw this stat, and there was a famous runner, and I'm sorry, I'm not real into sports, but her name was Flo, and she set a bunch of records back in the day. And they said, do you know how many male high school students broke her record this year? 30. She's an awesome woman runner, but she can't compete against men. And I'll take a little different angle on it. I look at it like this, especially when it comes to professional or competition sports. If I'm a guy like I am, and I decide that I can't really compete playing sports against men, but I want to look awesome, well, wouldn't it benefit me if all of a sudden I self-identified as a female and I went out there and competed against a whole category of people that are physically weaker than I am? Completely unfair. And what am I doing when I do that? I'm taking away those opportunities, which you guys talked about, from those females to compete. I'm hurting their morale. I'm keeping records away from them. I'm injuring them if it's a contact sport. And for what? Just to keep biological females from competing? I think that for some transgendered people, they certainly struggle with being transgendered. And I get that. And my heart pours out to them. For anyone that's got any type of condition that is stymied within culture around the world, I'm sympathetic to your struggle, and I got you. But I also think that there's some that is not the case, and they're taking advantage of the situation just because they feel that they can, and that's hurting other females. It's not hurting males; it's hurting other females. We're not talking about biological males that self-identify or biological females that self-identify as males going out competing against males. We're not talking about that. All right, we're talking about the other thing. And one more thing I wanted to say, I'm thinking of a non-contact sport like basketball. Basketball is highly physical, but you're not punching one another in the face the whole game. If you were to open up the NBA to females, the NBA is I think, a very unique sport because it doesn't deal with any type of racial justice, and I don't think it should deal with any type of sexual justice. The best players that can play basketball should be out there earning the most money for every team, and that's kind of how the sport is set up. But if we were to open it up to females, do we think we would see a lot of female basketball players in the NBA? No, and it goes right back to what Michael said. They just can't compete against men, and that's why we have women's basketball, men's basketball. It's always been that way, and it's unfair to women. You all have daughters. I have a daughter who's 17 years old. She flat out, I wouldn't want her out there in a boxing ring or in a football game with the NFL competing against biological males. I literally would be worried about her safety.
Right. And just real quick, and I think that's why you don't see transgender women that self-identify as or transition into men competing in the UFC in the men's department, right? If it's the same, you would see that, but you don't see that. You don't see these women that, transition to men competing against men. And so that right there is a proof that, this shouldn't be happening, because you only see, for the most part, I mean, I'm not aware of any, you only see these men that transition to women fighting against women.
Yeah, Brent, let me talk to that. So, in preparation for this, I wound up reading an article, Sex Segregation in Sport, Denial of Rights and Opportunities for Health. And it's written by Caroline Voiles for the Health and Human Rights Journal. And so I think this may be linked to either the Olympics, possibly the UN. But anyway, and it gets to kind of what you're talking about there. She talks about this one case of a runner in South Africa. And I won't go into the details because it's kind of twisted. With all the use of gender or pronouns, you'll get lost quickly. The point here, though, is what Bruce just said. The whole entire case is about a male who identifies as a female who wants to compete against females, and so Caroline Voiles, what she's saying is, yeah, we need to be sensitive to this. By the way, she claims that not of athletes, Bruce, but the answer is she claims that from their data, 3% of teenagers identify as transgender. And so I'm going, okay. But once again, if this is an issue, why is Voiles not arguing case studies and, vehemently for females who are transitioning to males and their access? No. That's not what she's arguing. She's arguing that males who transition to female should have access to female sports. And I'm like, she makes some solid arguments. I want to give her credit if you bothered to read the article. But I will tell you, she is very disappointingly one-sided about this. And so where are we going? Where are we going here?
Wow. So I have never coached any transgenders that I know of. I don't know what our association stand on in my state. We haven't addressed any of those issues. If they have, I don't know anything about them. My school, we do not have any transgenders that I know that attend school there that are willing or wanting to play any sport.
Well, I'll just chime in and say that for those that do exist, and there are some out there, and I do think they are overall few and far between. I do not want to see them denied the right to participate in a sport or anything else in life. That's certainly not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that when it risks the safety, the health, the future performance, the scholarships of other people, we're going to have to address that, because that's just not fair. That's not fair to those other people.
Hey, I put a highlighted comment here. I don't know if the stat's correct, but I mean, let's just take it for face value if what this guy's saying is correct. It says 3% of teenagers identify as trans, but out of that amount, the amount of transition is super low. I mean, so let's say that it is 3%. I mean, come on, we're gonna change everything. Everybody else has to change for 3% of the population here. I mean,
it's really 1.5%, right? Because we've already kind of said that those that are female, that are going to transition or self-identify as male, they're not really the ones that are involved in this sports debate. It's the other half that seem to be skewing these things in a negative way for those other participants.
Well, okay, now I'm going to do some obfuscation, but I'm going to do it intentionally so that I can show that I doubt the sincerity of the people who are using this to virtue signal. Here's what I mean. We're talking about sexual dimorphism. There's also a far less common but still prevalent species dimorphism. And again, species dimorphism was identified as a disorder, as a mental disorder, something along the lines 3,000 years ago in the Greek Golden Age, okay? The Greek Golden Age, which maybe 2,500 years ago, they identified species dysphoria. So that people think that they're a horse, or a woman that thinks she's a bird or a dolphin, all right? And again, this sounds like a smoke stream, but I'm saying, are we also going to then accommodate? Once we say, all right, well, we have to accommodate for men who are transitioning to women, and then we say, but we don't want to be exclusive here, so let's make sure we make accommodations for women who are transitioning to men. And then what about those men and women who are transitioning to horses? Do they run in the Kentucky Derby? I mean, how far are we going to go with this?
Yeah, I had this same conversation with my daughter when she was a little bit younger, and it was a fun one. It was a fun one because she's a very open-minded person, and I try to see her side. And she's like, Dad, no, I'm going to self-identify as an attack helicopter. And I started thinking this through. I said, okay, that's cute, that's funny, whatever, but let's play it out. Well, I, as a parent, couldn't let her do that, because what is she going to eat? JP9 jet fuel? What am I doing? Put hydraulic fluid in her? If I did that, and then was arrested as being the worst parent in the world, and my face would be all over every news show that there ever was for giving my young daughter jet fuel instead of water and endangering her health, I would go straight to jail. And my experience there wouldn't be pleasant, and her health would be risked because of it. And that's not a far cry from some of what we're talking about here. We're talking about young people, and I'm getting a little bit out of sports here, but really young people who are deciding that my body is that of a female, but my spirit is that of a male. And they're doing surgeries such as breast removal, sexual organ. They're swapping those out at a very young age, and that's irreversible stuff. To be making a decision as a teen, and then that are going to impact you the rest of your life. Now, someone else mentioned this in the comments, but I'm sure all of you fine gentlemen remember the awesome decisions that you all made as teens. And there's probably some of those that you look back on now wishing that you hadn't have done. I know that I had. Imagine doing some of those that are irreversible.
Right. So I was going to go back to what Doc said earlier. Are these young men and women, have they actually converted? So if a young man has it and he says he's going to compete as a female, yeah, that's probably going to present a huge problem competitive wise. So I start thinking about that. I don't know of any athlete. I haven't seen any athletes in my association in my state that identify or have, transitioned. So if they don't transition and compete, it's going to be very unfair to the young ladies that are out there competing.
Yeah, we're seeing that with these men breaking girls' records all over the country and stuff. Kind of like what Bruce talked about earlier.
Did you guys see that? He's in the music industry. I want to say he's like a rather famous DJ, British gentleman in the UK. And he was ranting and railing against this, and people were coming down on him. So he came out and he said, look, the reason I'm pushing so hard on this is, I have this identity crisis too. I identify as a female. And they were all like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, no, I do. And then he entered, even though he's like some music, industry guy, he entered like weightlifting for females. And it was a regional, like national level thing. And he not only won, but he set records. And apparently like the day after he set records, he came out and he said, it's amazing. After doing all that work, I no longer identify as a female. And of course he was on TV shows and everybody's like, you shamboozled everyone. He said, did I? Because you're the one who said it was fluid. So now the burden of proof is on you. Prove that I did not believe that I was a female or identify as a female when I broke all the female records and set new records. And so, I think we all know exactly what he did. And he was showing the fallacy of this. But again, for me, I'm far less worried about this at a professional level because we have consenting adults, because the stakes are high, because of all of the other things that they are. And if a man wants to pretend to be a female, well, we all know what we think about him. So I'm far less worried about that. I'm far more concerned about it, say, basically K through bachelor degree. Simply because of, so many safety issues, health issues, and of course, financial reward for scholarships and stuff like that. But not the least of which is, again, sexual dysphoria, species dysphoria is a known mental disorder. I am not making fun of people. It's like, oh, he's calling it a mental disorder. He's making fun of them. No, damn it. I don't make fun of cancer patients either. And I don't like, at someone who broke their leg. Damn it. It's serious. It's a real thing. It's been identified for thousands of years. No, it's sad. It's tragic. It's also fairly well known that the people who suffer this disorder have gone through acute, prolonged depression. And this is a coping mechanism. This is a manifestation of that. And so I'm not making fun of it at all. And I think it's a gross disservice to the people who are afflicted with this disorder, particularly minors, then to take advantage of that and say, oh, yes, let us appease this. To me, there's a real sickness. This is borderline child abuse, right? As an adult, it's a whole different can of worms. Same issue, but different ways of dealing with it.
Yeah, I got a coworker of mine told me that he took his kids to the park and neighborhood park, and like 3 or 4 occasions he's been there, and there's a neighbor of his that has like a 5 or 6 year old son that's dressed up like a little girl playing at the park, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Like, what the hell is going on there? What the hell are they thinking? Like, you can't tell me a 5, 6 year old can self-identify as whatever fucking sex they want. Sorry, I'm getting worked up here thinking about all this. But it's just irresponsible. And if it's not a mental health condition, I don't know what is. But mental health condition on the part of the parents in this regard.
And maybe just a smidge of desperation. I mean, I think we have a wide range of parent motivations as well. Certainly, we've seen some disgusting social pariahs who want attention and limelight, so they use their children to say, look at me, and virtue signal. And of course, virtue signaling without virtue is virtueless. But nonetheless, I think there's genuinely confused parents who are simply trying to protect their children the best way that they know how. And there's not a book on this, right? Well, there is actually, but it's not their degree. They didn't go get their doctorate in it. And so, yeah, I mean, I am compassionate, believe it or not. I wouldn't wish that on that disorder on anyone. I really wouldn't. And so I want to be compassionate to that. But I think that's part of the issue. The other part of the issue gets back to what I was saying early on, and that is simply this. Should we have professionally, should we have, a segregation of by sex for sports? Maybe we should.
Are you saying on the professional level, will it be supported? How does it support it if it's on the professional level? I mean, there's many people that watch, professional football, basketball. Is it going to be supported? How do you support it?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point. One way is meritocracy, where we simply say everybody in the NFL deserves to be there because they're there, and we allow women to compete, and by the way, they never get on. Or they're relegated to a kicker status or some kind of really odd one-off. So that's one way. The other way is there are models. Did you guys ever watch, I think it's long since stopped, but there was this thing called Eco Challenge, and it was considered like the greatest land navigation race. It was like a 5-day race. It always had multiple components of it. They would go over a mountain. You always had a mountain. You always had a water. So they're doing kayaking and all this other stuff. They're running, they're biking. There was always an animal. There's always an animal phase of it. Sometimes it was elephant, sometimes it was ostrich, camel, horseback, whatever. And these I think it was four-person teams. These 4-person teams would compete for this, and it was a once-a-year thing. It was a huge prize, and it was wonderful to watch this. Eco Challenge had a simple rule. There cannot be an all-male team. There cannot be an all-female team. And beyond that, we don't care how you stack it. So the special forces, they would always send a SEAL team, a Green Beret team, a Ranger team, something. Special forces would always send a team, a 4-person team. And it was interesting because they're all males, and they would always have to reach out to some survival instructor or something within, let's say, an Air Force, survival instructor or something, and she would join the team and stuff like that. And I just use that as a model to say, well, I know that's not individual combat, like one-on-one combat in MMA. That would be a different thing. But yeah, I mean, there are models that we say, well, you can set regulations to say every team has to be mixed gender to X percentage, right?
I think probably the issue with that would be that in, say, MMA, someone would get hurt, right? Someone would get hurt. And I got another point that I sort of wanted to make. And maybe Michael can chime in on this too. But, I got a lot of respect for coaches, and I learned a lot from my coaches. My coaches were very inspirational to me. I'm not a professional athlete. Surprise, surprise. I know with this body, you guys think that I am, but I wasn't. But I was pretty fast in high school and thought I was competitive. And one of the great things about high school sports, it taught me a lot, but there was another. It got me off the couch to stop eating Cheetos and got me in shape. I did cross country, wrestling, track, and football, and they overlapped. That was a year-round training regimen. I never got a break. And I did that, and I know a lot of sports adolescents do that because they look up to athletes that are in the professional field. For me, it was Herschel Walker. My dad was a football fan through and through. He was a quarterback from a high school football team. I played high school football. My brother played high school football for the same school. We would go to UGA, watch Herschel Walker crack football helmets, and that was our thing, man. I mean, that was inspirational to me. And I know there's a lot of other athletes out there, high school athletes, that are athletes and are involved in sports because they look up to professional athletes. They look up to, whether it's Michael Jordan or whomever it is, right? That's where they get their motivation and their inspiration. Well, if we take women out of that, if there's no women's sports, if there's no female national basketball, women's national basketball association, right? How many women that follow that as adolescents would just lose interest in the sport? They don't. I know that. I bet you that most of the students that have been coached by Michael didn't go on to set records, and they didn't go on to play in professional sports. But what is he doing for their health while he's coaching them, right? They're off the couch. They're out from in front of the Xbox. They're getting in shape. And that's setting them up for success, healthy success in the future. I think that if we were to just say all females compete with males, throw you all in one box, and good luck to you, we wouldn't have any female sports, or very few, and that inspiration would be gone.
Absolutely. So yeah, I do address issues like that. So I have seen situations where, especially in my sport of cross country and track and field, some of the male coaches will neglect the female teams because they don't understand. There is a huge difference when you're coaching female and male athletes. I think at the start, my female teams were larger than the boys' teams, so it's not a contact sport in a sense. And then there's a lot of praise. I have to develop a lot of praise for these young ladies because I will say this for at least the high school young ladies and girls that I coach, they were emotionally driven. If I encouraged them, they were going to come out. They would build that team up, and they excelled at what they did. I have one has graduated from college since I've coached. She was on an athletic scholarship, and I have 3 right now. They're in college right now on scholarships. If it wasn't for that all-female team, that bonding, that getting together, the competition between them and other teams, I don't think they would probably made it on the collegiate level as an athlete. So having a guy come in there and beat them day in and day out, or guys from other teams, I don't think I would get those results.
You know, Michael, I'm going to agree with you on that. And to answer Bruce's question, or at least to address his point, you're right. It's far more. That's why I said it's far more than the external rewards of scholarships and even trophies. It is some of the things you got to, Bruce. I mean, for males and females both. Sports provides social venue. Definitely a health and fitness venue. That's the obvious, but there are social venues. It also is a venue for developing and increasing one's self-confidence. And there are leadership opportunities, the opportunity to influence a team. So these are cherished skills throughout corporate America, throughout the government, employment, throughout even like religious organizations. And so you were right. I am concerned that, particularly, as I said, kindergarten through bachelor degree, I'm very concerned about integrating that. I think we do need to, there's a strong argument to be made, a moral argument, but also a human argument to be made that we need to protect female sports, because this is not none of us are here talking about protecting male sports. We're not doing that. We're talking about protecting female sports. When it comes right down to it, that's what we're doing. And I think several people in the comments may have missed that we're not discussing how to protect the good old boy system. We're actually discussing how to protect a valued female system.
Yeah.
So I think maybe a segregation is as big of a pain in the butt as it is, but a further segregation, recognizing we already have male and female, of transgendered or something to that effect for kindergarten through bachelor's degree probably is the correct solution.
Yeah, and Title IX gave the ability for young ladies to come in after high school to compete on the collegiate level. So it protected a lot of those interests. There are some schools that I guess during the COVID era got rid of some of their male programs, but they didn't touch any of the female programs on a lot of Division I programs. So it's important, like you said, the friendship, the socialization. So I try to build all that on my high school team because I look at it like this, that cross country, at least what I see it provides them, hey, they know how to, this is what I told some of my young ladies that graduated one year. I said, hey, if I was an employer and you were coming out, I would probably hire you first as a cross country person because you put a lot of long hours in, you know how to work, you're dedicated. This sport is not, done overnight in the fall when you come to school. There's a lot of training put in during the summer months. So I'd hate for somebody to come in there that, hey, I'm going to run against the women, it wouldn't be fair. So they do. There's a lot of things that helps them out, throughout life. Some of them that have graduated from my school that went on to college. They didn't run collegiately, but hey, they still participate in these sports. They run the recreational 5 and 10Ks, and some of them have ran up to the marathon level. And when they give those awards out at these local 5 and 10Ks, there's always a separation between the men and the women categories, age group and sex.
Hey, where are the feminist groups standing up for these women? Where are they?
Good question.
They're lost.
All the ones
They're
that had the little vagina hats on their head back
Nope.
when President Trump got elected. Where are they
Yeah, they're
at? Why
absent.
aren't they protecting the women?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're right, and someone else kind of, I don't know if they said it, just a quip, or if they had some deep, oh look, segregation works. Hey, you know what? Segregation does work, and it works in certain areas. Let me show you. For example, we still segregate all those same sports and academics by age.
Yes.
Age is segregation. So there we are. And by the way, when you walk into your doctor and you've got a medical emergency, that doctor's going to say, hey, how old are you? Segregation. What ethnic race are you? Because there's certain things they're looking for. Segregation. What gender are you? What sex are you born as? There's a segregation. Yeah, segregation does work for certain things. We need to classify, and we need to, in a certain sense, protect. That is, to recognize that each one of these different classifications has some discerning factor that we need to protect. And so, yeah, I'm not saying segregation at the drinking fountain, but I am saying, yeah, segregation actually does work. It's like saying the word manipulation is a bad word. Manipulation, oh, that's such an abusive word. Really? You manipulate a math problem. And yes, we have segregation, which is merely putting people into classifications, and it does work for certain, outcomes.
Hey guys, I just want to chime in here. We're almost at an hour, so let's try to wrap this topic up so we can move on to our next one. How about you speak, Les? I haven't heard you talk in a while.
A lot of people have been making some great points here and stuff, and I'm really at a loss to add anything really cogent to the conversation.
All right, anybody got any final thoughts before we move on?
Hey, guys, I enjoyed it. Doc, hey, I've always wanted to get to your place. I'm kind of busy, like he said, coaching and stuff. I'm going to step out. I enjoyed it, gentlemen. Good meeting. I've seen you guys online with the first sergeant, now former gunnery sergeant. So appreciate your service. And if there's anything I can do for you if you're in my neck of the woods, Brent's got my address and phone number. Call. I've got extra bed space because I'm an empty nester. Anytime, any place, it's here. Y'all have a good evening. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for
Michael.
coming, Mike. Thank
Yes,
Hey,
sir.
Mike, I appreciate you, brother. I haven't seen you in a long time, so I know we talk on the phone, but I haven't seen your face in a while, and it's good to see you again, brother.
Hoorah. Kill.
Have a good night, man. All right, guys. Well, let's move on to our second topic here. So there's a Bob Woodward book coming out, and in that book, allegedly, General Milley made a call to the CHICOMs, his counterpart in the CHICOM PLA, and it's alleged that he said or told them that he would give them a heads up if the U.S. was going to launch an attack on China. So, again, I want to stress that this is Bob Woodward, so take it with a grain of salt. It's an allegation. As far as I understand, the call was made. We just don't know what exactly was said. So, we can kick this around and see what your guys' thoughts on. How about you start this off, Les, since you've been so quiet on the sidelines here with the transgender stuff.
All right, I'm going to jump on this grenade. Researched and watched everything over the weekend that I could to kind of get spooled up on this topic. And I'm thinking what we're dealing with here is a classic C story that's got out of control. And by that, what I mean is I think the call happened. I think they probably do have these calls all the time. It's a known fact during the Cold War that U.S. and Soviet commanders talked from time to time. Hell, they even attended each other's exercises. So the fact that there was a call made, and paraphrasing a bit here, wouldn't surprise me after January 6th if Miley didn't get a call from his Chinese counterpart going, hey, what the fuck? And Miley going, dude, it's cool. Now the C story kicks in because somehow word gets back to Woodward and just going, hey, dudes, things are cool. Yeah, it's a little crazy over here, but things are going to be fine. Don't worry. It's no big deal. Became, oh, yeah, Milley sat there and told him, oh, we won't attack you and all that. Just like the typical C story starts in the Corps. You know, you have the Lance Corporal go, hey, Lieutenant, I think we're going the wrong direction here. You know, and the lieutenant goes, oh, yeah, you're right. We're not heading the right way. Thank you, Lance Corporal. And the story back at the barracks is, yeah, the LT was all fucked up, had to grab the compass out of his hand, point him in the right damn direction. That's the best spin I can put on it. Bob Woodward is not a reliable source. He's been proven wrong many a time. However, the general does not deny the phone call, but we don't know the concept. We don't have the transcript of the call, so we don't know what they said. Hell, they might have been trading recipes for sweet and sour pork and beef and broccoli for all we know. On the other hand, if we take the phone call and Bob Woodward's report at face value, which so far has not been refuted, General Milley's statement really didn't refute the contents of what Bob Woodward's complaining, which would be easy to refute by the general walking out and going, no, Bob Woodward's full of shit. And he distinctly did not do that. Taken at face value, it's an incredibly worrisome statement, to say the least. And General Milley wears the tab of United States Army Ranger on him. That I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. That tab should be there. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. When he went through Ranger school, he read the Ranger handbook. Somewhere on the first page, some editions, it's the first sentence of the first paragraph, says the patrol leader is responsible for everything the patrol does and does not do. General Milley leads the world's largest patrol. He is responsible for all the actions of the U.S. Armed Forces, being the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That being said, if he made the statement to his Chinese counterpart that he is alleged to have made, then my advice to the general is this, and this is my advice alone. General, in addition to all your accoutrements you've been issued, your cummerbund, your boat cloak, you were issued a sword. Fall on it, literally or figuratively. When you're allowed the privilege, and it truly is a privilege, of leading America's sons and daughters into harm's way, lowly as a fire team leader or as a 4-star general, you've had the greatest privilege bestowed on you this nation can bestow. It gives no higher privilege besides what the bullshit politicians may think. That is the truest privilege you will ever get from this country. The mothers and fathers of America who give you their sons and daughters to lead into harm's way rightfully demand absolute accountability. There is no compromise on that. There's no ifs. There's no and buts. It doesn't come with a big asterisk next to it. They demand absolute accountability. A lot has gone wrong under General Milley's watch, and he needs to hold accountable and step up and take responsibility if what he's alleged to have been done has been in fact done.
Well, that's a wrap. Okay, good night, folks. I mean,
little wrapped around the axle on this one. Sorry, guys.
Well, I mean, what else is there to say? I think you called it exactly right. I'm going to give the man the benefit of the doubt until, he's been reportedly make 2 phone calls. If, as Les said, if he's authorized to make those phone calls, then who are we to say he shouldn't make those phone calls, I know that a general doesn't make treaties, right? Okay, we know that. We know that our military is apolitical, okay, by design. But if he was authorized to make calls to his counterparts in China, as Les said, there's plenty of precedents going back hundreds of years for this. No big deal. He made a call. He made 2. That's what they're reporting. Whoop-de-doo. If he said, hey, I'll let you know if we're going to get attacked. And even if he said it in jest, then do the right thing. Resign.
And, to be fair to the general, and I think in this case, because he's a general, he's a man who's gotten to the top, he's clearly proven himself. It could have been a totally tongue-in-cheek remark like, oh, we'll let you know we're going to attack. Then said part been, when the fucking nuke goes off in downtown Beijing, I mean, that could have been his intent. I have seen no transcript of this phone call. I can find no record of it. I'm not going to trust Bob Woodward.
No, but what you said is true, though. What's disturbing is that, he was very clear. General Milley was very clear. He said, I am not talking to journalists. I'm not talking to the rest of you. I'm being called in front of Congress, right? And a hearing committee, whatever it is. But then he didn't say, no, it's not true. How are we supposed to read that? I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I mean, this is what this is starting to sound like, what is the definition of is? Stop it. Did you actually say this or not? And the fact that he's not denying it leads me to a very uncomfortable place.
And that's where I'm getting hung up too. Because I'd have a whole lot more warm and fuzzies right now if he'd have come out and just said, nah, bullshit. Bob Woodward's full of it. I don't know where he got that stuff. He can pound sand, and in the modern day, the military stands in high regard with the American public. Bob Woodward would lose that fight.
Yeah.
So, John Murdoch says, I think China will invade Taiwan within 1 year. And here's what bothers me about Milley's words, if true. And that is, even in jest, that sort of comment can be read as a green light by China. We know that there was a similar sort of discussion with Saddam Hussein asking a question to the Bush administration, whereby he misunderstood the intent of the Bush administration and said, oh, they'll sit on their hands if we invade Kuwait. And that's exactly what he did. So, right. I mean, this is the concern. You don't say things like that, in that position. It's just wholly inappropriate. And I'm not saying hang the man, bury him in a hole. I'm saying, okay, since he's not denying it, this is leading us to conclude that he did in fact say those words or something thereabout to the Chinese general. And if that's the case, then you need to own up to your mistake, be a leader and say,
fall on your sword, literally or figuratively.
Right. I mean, his service. Hey, thank you, General, for your service. Let's let somebody else who's just a little sharper and a little more on their game step up into your role, and you step aside. And thank you for your service. And that's done, right? It doesn't have to be a witch hunt, and I'm not looking for one. But the fact that he didn't go say, no, I didn't do that, and this guy's full of beans, that bothers me.
Well, there's another level to this accountability that needs to be looked at. We all had it drilled into us when we were PFCs and Lance Corporals that the appearance of impropriety is just as bad as the act itself. The primary example that was always used was fraternization. Being with a higher rank, or when you got to be a higher rank, being with a lower rank. That's minor compared to this, So there's an appearance of impropriety here at a minimum that has to be addressed. And here's my fear. He gave the correct answer and I'm not going to say anything. I've got to go speak to Congress. That's the correct answer. Correct answer. Now he's going to go before Congress. And regardless of what he says, whether there'll be somebody trying to get that big aha moment out of him. And even if they achieve it, then what? Congress has no power over him. The only thing that can happen to him is if somebody gets that aha moment and he goes, yeah, I did it, so the hell what? That they can put enough pressure on the administration to shit can him. I don't think they will.
Technically, his commission is through Congress. So Congress commissions every officer. They could bust him down to E7.
Oh, they totally could. They could make it an E1 when he walks out of the room. But here's the thing. Congress would be just as divided on this as any other freaking issue. One side is going to think he's the hero. And I think that's where this story comes from, to be honest. Look at the timing of it. From January 6th to last week, you didn't hear any supposedly this thing, Trump wanted to nuke China, but gee, all of a sudden after the nonstop debacles in Afghanistan, the withdrawal, the abandoning Bagram, droning a freaking aid worker. All of a sudden, General Milley, who's really tarnished, oh, he's the hero now because he stood up to the bad orange man who wanted to start a nuclear war. The story's too damn convenient.
Oh, yeah. And right. It's much ado about nothing. I mean, when Brent first said we're going to talk about this, I thought, okay, well, it's got merit. But, you know, the more you look at it, I absolutely agree. Man, Les, you and I are dominating this. The rest of you guys should be like gang up against us or something. But I agree. I was like, this isn't really that much of a story. It does have its disturbing aspects. And I do think, you know, again, if Miley isn't going to deny it, then General Milley needs to step down. That said, I'm going, this looks like, hey, everybody look over there. Don't, you know, the red herring, right? Don't look at my guy who had this absolutely debacle, you know, in Afghanistan, a strategic failure, a defeat of the United States Armed Forces under his watch, and couldn't even get Americans out, you know, without the Taliban and ISIS just absolutely murdering them. Don't pay attention to that. And the one thing, you know, when Biden does this, well, I told you after the bombing at the airport, we'd get them and we drone strike them, you know, and now he's like, oh, we don't drone strike a bunch of civilians and murdered innocent bystanders. Holy crap. Let's not look at that.
You guys are cutting into our next topic.
They're kind of interlinked if you think about it, Brent.
Well, I mean, yeah, I can't help but see this when they're saying Miley is our hero because he stopped the nuclear war, man. He was there. He was in the sub, finger on the switch, and he said, no, I'll take one for the Democrat Party and, you know, for liberalism in America. And by the way, I'm transgender. Now, come on.
Boy, talk about weaving the topics there. Good one, Doc.
I know, but come on. Seriously, no, it wasn't that. And yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, when I first heard this story, let me back up for a minute. I thought I was going to bring a unique opinion to this, being the civilian in the group, and Les totally stole my thunder, and then Doc, you backed him up. I'm actually surprised.
Sorry
I did not expect for
Bruce.
you two. I thought you two were going to do exactly what I did when I first heard the story break, which is that get your pitchforks, let's run this traitor out on a rail. Okay. But you two didn't do that. And I'm not going to do that, because the thing that kind of changed my mind about the whole story is I started seeing people that were being interviewed that were in a similar position to his in the past. Maybe not his exact position, but a similar position. And they were holding their cards close to their chest. They were not saying what he did was wrong. He's a traitor. We would never do that. They were saying these phone calls happen all the time. We communicate back and forth with the Chinese and other countries that would be considered enemies of ours, enemies of our government way of life. And this is just happens all the time, and is a way to keep them from going off crazy and putting their finger on a nuke before we put our finger on a nuke. So I just sit back and listen to those people, because we're talking about individuals that were under different administrations, not just Democrat, but also Republicans. It's like, okay, if they're not coming out saying what he did was wrong, there's got to be more to this story. Now, I do have a problem. In principle, if our generals are reaching out to the Chinese going, we'll let you know when we're going to attack. I don't think that's probably the best practice, and we probably shouldn't be doing that. Now, we don't know the backstory. And I think this general is also, there's a reason that he's not responding. There was a period of time before he was going to be called before Congress, and he could have immediately came out and said, yeah, it's true and we do it all the time, or no, it's totally bogus and Bob Woodward's just lying again. Or at least Bob Woodward, which he's known to do, is not put this thing in full context, and he could have explained it. I've got the feeling that maybe this general is trying to take something that started out as a really bad story, but maybe give someone, I think, which Doc alluded to, enough rope to hang themselves, like Woodward or other news agencies that immediately came out against the general and got people stoked up. Hey, we got to run him out on a rail. He's a traitor. And then he'll come back and then at some point release the full story. Now, we would have spent a couple of weeks talking about this instead of talking about other things. If it ends up being a giant nothing burger, then he can explain it away. We'll wait and see. But there's a lot of other stuff going on in the news than just this one topic. And the more time that news channels are spending talking about this one topic, other things that are going on in the background are happening and they're not being covered.
Yeah, right. You don't hear anything about Afghanistan right now.
Where did Afghanistan go? We're worried about Bob Woodward and this general making a phone call to China a freaking year ago that ended up being nothing.
Hey, on Afghanistan, though, I did hear that there were 3 bombings in Afghanistan the other day by ISIS-K. So I'm hoping that those 2 little, I mean, what better scenario that 2 little jihadi organizations start killing each other? I mean, that's
couldn't happen to a nicer group of people.
I know, right?
Well, I'm all for it, except that the poor Afghan people are stuck in between.
Right. Yes, there's that.
Of course.
There is that, you know.
A similar situation in Syria years ago too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Let me just detour just for a minute. Don't mean to go too far, but one of our commenters with the handle Jody Arias said, quote, "I just don't respect those who served." And I wanted to do a bit of an English teacher here. Jody, I think you meant, "I just don't respect those who served me." Because the men on this panel did serve, and they did serve you, and you're welcome, ma'am. All right. Other than that, yeah, I think you're right. I think this is a smokescreen, guys. I think right now with everything else that's going poof, this is what we're given. And by the way, Bruce, good assessment. Something that happened a year ago that's much ado about nothing now.
Yeah, absolutely. It just stinks. I mean, the timing is just too perfect. I mean, I couldn't find it in any research I did this weekend preparing for this topic. You know, I can't find anything between January 6th and last week mentioning nuking fucking China. It's just, I cannot find it, you know? And you kind of think that would be a big deal. And if you're going to impeach Trump after January 6th, wow, there's a handy piece of evidence that might make your case a little easier, because it's really hard for the Republicans to defend the big orange man for wanting to nuke everybody. So it's kind of another thing that calls the bullshit meter to go off.
Yeah. If Nancy Pelosi was aware that Trump wanted to nuke China, she would find a way to try to impeach him right now. That would already be happening. That would be the greatest story that was landed into the Democrats' lap in this last year. We're just now finding out about it from Bob Woodward.
This last year, are you kidding me? The last time the Democrats had that kind of story, it was with MacArthur in Korea, 1952. Are you? No, I mean, it was a huge story back then. It's a non-story now. It didn't happen.
And that's a good point you bring up, because there's another part of this story that's getting overlooked. Supposedly, the claim there is that the general ordered the 101st and the 10th Mountain from their bases down to Washington, D.C. because of the unrest. I can't find out if that's true or not by the research I did, and which I'll admit I didn't have a chance to extensively look at. But if that's the case, that's a major violation, because the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff technically can't give anybody an order except by his rank. Now, you probably don't want to be a 2-star division commander turning down a 4-star order. That's probably not a good career move, you know, but you know, that was a major thing. That's why MacArthur got sacked, you know, because he started making decisions that the president didn't make. Yeah. You know, that is a major thing. And regardless of your political affiliation, if Miley did that, that is far bigger a deal than the phone call. Also, it should be a fact pretty easily to verify. You can't move that many troops and have somebody not talk about it.
Yeah, no. I think this is a smokescreen. I keep saying the same word. And Brent, if you'll pardon me, I think it has at least some to do with the drone strike in Afghanistan that was ordered by the Biden administration.
All right, there's our segue.
Well, Brent, we need you to chime in on this. We haven't heard your opinion.
Yeah. Well, Brent might not be in a position where he can.
Yeah. Well.
Fair enough.
Careful.
All right. So segue into our final topic of conversation here. So there was a UAV drone strike that took place shortly after the terrorist attack that killed 13 U.S. service members. And this drone strike was said at the time to take out some ISIS-K terrorist, didn't provide us with a name. And it was essentially hailed as this big success. Hey, this is a success of our over-the-horizon new strategy. And we're coming to find out, and the Pentagon has admitted that, no, this drone strike took out a civilian aid worker and essentially his whole family.
Children.
Yes, children. So, that's our next topic. So let's go ahead and pick it up.
Let me kick it off because I'm probably the least experienced in this kind of thing, and I'll say what I got to say and get out of the way. There's a problem that I have with this story. Accidents happen in every war. Okay, accidents happen. People, the best intelligence fails, and unfortunately, women and kids and civilians get hurt, and I hate that. My heart bleeds for that. It is what it is. It's war, and it's ugly, and there's a reason that we don't like it. But when this drone strike happened, and the news broke, and the video broke, showing these rocket launchers in the back of this car completely destroyed, damage all around, someone official said that there were secondary explosions that are indicative of high explosive being in that vehicle. There was a Hellfire missile strike, and then there was a secondary explosion. Now, someone watched that footage who was very well trained, and they know that if those were water tubes and not high explosive canisters, there was no secondary explosion. Some have tried to say that it was the fuel tank of that vehicle. I call BS. I don't think that's going to look like the secondary explosion that high explosive loaded in the back of a car would appear to be. I believe someone fabricated that part of the story. And I think that that's where we should be looking. Who fabricated that to try to substantiate the story early on that this was a car filled with explosive devices, rockets, whatever, that were going to be deployed against the airfield. And I'm going to leave it at that.
All right, that's a good point. So we know that petroleum, whether it's diesel or whether it's leaded gasoline, it does not have a high explosive. It is a thermobaric explosive, and so that's a different matter entirely. However, some vehicles, and I don't know if this is prevalent in Afghanistan, are LPG, the liquid propelled gases. And so that's certainly a potential answer, is if that LPG was there. Or I would say this. I would say that if you hit my wife's SUV at some point with a Hellfire, we might have a couple or few gas tanks back there for our barbecue, our burner, I'm saying propane. And so there are normal consumer items that will explode under high pressure and therefore mimic high explosives. And so, my point is that an analyst can make a mistake. And I know that we have just this wonderful technology. I'm not anti-technology. I promise you I'm not. My doctorate is in educational technologies, educational psychology. But it's an interesting combination because, look, when NASA's looking at some distant solar system and they're looking at some M-class planet or what they hope to be an M-class planet, and one of the ways they do is they refract light and they analyze this, and we're telling, is it a methane or an oxygen-based planet? This is incredible, right? And so analysts have many tools at their disposal, and they're experts in their field. And I don't want to take away from that. I'm just saying analysts aren't always correct. And for me, this has been the disturbing trend of the hyper-emphasis on U.S. dominance through technology. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate U.S. combat dominance. And for those who know what that means, I'm not going to go into a diatribe. It it means we force our will on our enemies while mitigating and dramatically reducing our human losses. And not just our human losses, but in the long run, we actually mitigate and diminish the number of civilian casualties and even enemy casualties. That's a hard thing to get your head around. It doesn't seem intuitive, but this is the power of precision weapon systems. And so I do get that, and I value that. I mean, look at we all know this. Look at body armor alone. Look how it has grown in the last 20 years. The last 2 decades, 1 generation, body armor is just doing phenomenal things. And so I deeply appreciate technology, but when we lean on it, and we do, we grossly lean on that as a U.S. force, because it's where we advanced. We're so quickly and so much more advanced than any of our antagonists and enemies. And so we lean on this and we say, yeah, that's going to be our end all be all. We're not going to look at human factors of cognition and physics. Are you kidding me? We just talked about gender studies, and all of the hardcore hard data research was kicked out and ignored by Congress. So we're not going to look at human factors of leadership, human cognition, physicality. And we're not going to even address unit organization, how units can, mission organize to be more successful. Well, that's an age-old fight. No one wants to get into that again. All right, so then what are we left with? Well, we're left with technology. And as Brent said, now we're shooting technology across the horizon. So we don't have human eyes on. We don't have a human diagnosis before. We don't have humans saying, no, it's not what it looks like. We have technology. And we have analysts after the fact saying, I see blue flame, that's indicative, it's not red flame, that would be gasoline. I see blue flame, that's an indication of high explosive. Therefore, I think we hit our right target, only to find out we didn't.
Yeah, there's always going to be mistakes in war, but that still doesn't leave accountability out of it. You can have a genuine oopsie, and they've happened, but at the same token, think about it. We've all been on a range sometime in our career at Qual Day, and somebody had an AD. We've all seen an AD at some point, and that person gets freaking fried. Absolutely. I've even seen somebody get fried because they had an AD into the discharge barrel, the very place the round was supposed to go in case you had one. And yet there was still an accountability there. And I think that's the real issue behind this drone strike. It's not so much the oopsie, is where is the accountability? This is a mistake you don't get allowed to make, and somebody made it, and they've got to be held accountable. And again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying about General Milley, because he walked out and said this was a righteous strike. Okay, if somebody fed him data to him to make that bold statement, somebody needs to fry pretty damn hard, because by the time it got to him with that data, there was a whole lot of ass covering going on.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna call it, and I can say this because I am a civilian and have been a civilian for quite some time now. Some of you guys, some of us in this panel can't, or don't have that liberty. What I'm going to say is that I agree with you, Les, and it's not going to surprise anybody. What you're talking about is a strategic corporal. So a corporal in a rice paddy in some God forbidden place pulls the trigger. Who pulls the trigger? That is right. The corporal pulls the trigger, and it can have catastrophic emphasis, or impact, and it can. That's why we call that a strategic corporal, right? It can resonate throughout the world. If you don't believe me, we study this, or used to, in American civics. I know you guys are going, what are American civics? It's what we called things before social studies. Anyway, in American civics, we studied the shot heard around the world, the beginning of the American Revolution, the battle at Lexington and Concord, and no one still to this day knows who exactly pulled that trigger. But I guarantee you it was a corporal, and it was a strategic corporal. And so that happens. But here's the thing. Who's telling that corporal to pull the trigger? That corporal is assessing. And you're right, Les. If he gets it wrong, he suffers that consequences. But in this case, it was a drone strike. It wasn't a human being. Now you say, well, it had a pilot sitting back in, Fort Huachuca, Arizona, or Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, and wherever the hell it was. And they're flying a drone out there and they hit. Look, we know what had happened in the days preceding this. There was a terrorist attack on retreating civilians that resulted in the death and injury of a whole bunch of U.S. servicemen and women and our warriors in harm's way. And this was a dastardly attack. Biden wanted to back his words. He said, I'll hunt you down. I'll kill you wherever you are. Remember that, he was foaming at the mouth and he said, I'm going to do this. There was pressure, and the pressure on that drone pilot came no less than President Biden himself. And that was the pressure to do something. I've said these words, now back it up. Maybe I'm wrong. Hey, I've been wrong before. It's not going to be the end of the universe if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think that's what we're looking at. And I think that's why we are desperate right now. The news media is desperate to look anywhere else other than at that story.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Doc. 100%. So, and what blows my mind is, again, they held this as like this big success story as, hey, we can do this over the horizon strategy. We don't need boots on the ground in Afghanistan, but we could still reach out and touch ISIS-K. And again, when this happened, as you guys already pointed out, like it was held as this big success. Yeah. And now we've learned that no, it was catastrophic failure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Not just any civilians, U.S. aid workers and his whole family, like they were taking humanitarian aid. I mean, catastrophic failure. I mean, unbelievable. And we're still not hearing about it in the news about, okay, so hey, you prop this up as being this huge success. Well, now we know it's a failure. So what do you have to say about that?
This was an example of why over the horizon won't work.
Right. There's no human intelligence. You can have all the sensors and shit up in space all you want, but unless you got human intelligence, it's not going to work.
There's an old axiom that says, tanks conquer, artillery kills, and infantry occupies. Anything that flies or launches a weapon that's not held by a man with two hands and is called a rifle is a form of artillery. When all you can do is kill, you've really limited yourself. An infantryman can do so much more. An infantryman can assess. An infantryman can just talk it out. An infantryman can diffuse a situation by walking into the village and playing ball with the kids. No drone will ever do that.
Yeah, I want to point out this comment. He says the reality is that you have to have vetted human intelligence on the ground, multi-international to hit a target over the horizon to have to be effective battle damage assessment. And you know what? To be quite frank, there probably was human intelligence involved in this. There probably was somebody on the ground, not military though. It's probably some Afghan that wanted a quick payday. He's like, yeah, my neighbor across the street is loading bombs, and then they wanted to have some retribution quick. And they launched that freaking hellfire. And
it was probably the Afghan version of Abdi from Black Hawk Down.
Well, the information that came out, I'm not sure if you guys heard this, but they said that we were tracking this vehicle for 8 hours. We tracked this guy all freaking day, going back and forth, to and fro, loading stuff in his car, taking stuff out of his car before the go-ahead was given on this strike. So it was more than just a quick momentary call of, hey, let's do something before something bad happens. It seems like we had been watching this guy for a very long time before that call was made.
I mean, I applaud them trying to get some sort of retaliatory strike. If you've been in combat, civilian casualties happen. But what I just want to emphasize that this was held as a success for this over the horizon and not having boots on the ground. And we just learned that that's not the case.
Yeah.
No, it's the exact opposite. We blew it big time, and it would probably do a lot for our world standing with both in the eyes of the average person and other governments if we just freaking owned up to it real quick. The story was broke. Clearly it was classified. So somebody somewhere had a conscience and broke this and leaked the story. because the military would be very happy to bury this under classification for a very long time.
Well, but this gets back to the lieutenant colonel, the Marine lieutenant colonel, saying, "Hey guys, accountability, stand up for it." And I think that's why I suspect more than anything else, if someone said, "Whoops, here's where it broke down," no one wants to say that because the guillotine. They don't, it's how to manage your career, right? And this isn't the military I knew that said, this far more Clausewitzian and said, hey, risk is a component of this, so I can't help but feel that the reason no one is being drug off to the gallows is, and I'm not saying they should be, but I'm saying I think the reason they're not being is because I feel like the pressure came from much, much higher up the food chain.
The very top of the food chain, Doc.
Yeah.
And I think everybody basically realizes that. I think that's why the media doesn't want to cover it. I think that's why this story about General Milley's being spun to cover it up. I think there's a lot going on. I don't think your average American, and I know I'm making a broad statement here, I don't think your average American holds that drone operator completely responsible.
No,
not for a second.
No, that drone operator didn't make that call.
Yeah, because of it was just
operator did what he was trained to do. He flew that Hellfire right into that car. Someone told him to do that. That wasn't his fault.
Right.
And look at the history we've seen since Abu Ghraib. If they could throw specialists under the bus for this, they would.
Jesus Christ. You had to bring that up. Oh, my God.
Oh, shit. How do I get spit back in the grenade? Holy crap.
When the Shield of Sham, when the United States Congress has to go all the way down to the Shield of Sham, an E4 enlisted personnel, to find culpability. I thought I'd seen it all when, come on, what was the Marine Lieutenant Colonel in late 80s and the Iran-Contra affair? What was his name?
What was
Colonel North.
Colonel North.
Oliver North.
And I thought, my God, that guy was a scapegoat. He was a scapegoat. When in 05, when a lieutenant colonel is scapegoated for the national, for national policy. And I'm just like, whoa, holy cow. We didn't even get a senator. We didn't even get a mayor. Like, they didn't go to some small town in Nebraska and just say, someone needs to die here. Let's get that mayor over there. He's only got 1,800 people in his town. We'll scapegoat him. No, they went to a lieutenant colonel. I'm like, yeah, one down from the postmaster in that Nebraska town, I'm like, Jesus Christ. I thought, man, you're never going to see this again in your lifetime. You're never going to see, diplomatic political failure scapegoated to a Marine lieutenant colonel. Oh, no, Abu Ghraib. They went right for the gusto. Hey, let's get a glorified private. This guy, these guys are just like, hey, I tied my boots because someone told me to, Yeah, you're in charge of national, policy with foreign operations. Okay.
You get that out of your system there, Doc? You feel better now?
You're the one that brought it up, damn you.
Since Abu Ghraib came up, I got a funny story to tell about that, because I have actually been there in 04. So this is after the scandal. But we went up this is right before the second Fallujah offensive. We went up there and relieved 3-1, a rifle company from 3-1, so that they could go take part in the Fallujah offensive. We were coming up from Najaf. And there was these big mass caged holding areas for the EPWs. And every day around chow time, we had to walk. I mean, this is a big place, but the chow hall is one building, like smack dab in the middle. So, you have Marines and Army personnel are in their respective living areas and everything. We had to walk great distances to get to the chow hall. Every day around chow time, they would mortar us. They would launch a few mortars, and then they would jump in their Toyota pickups and drive off, because there was counter battery radar set up. And so they knew they only had so much time to drop a few rounds and then get the hell out of Dodge before, they had some freaking 155s dropping on top of them. But anyways, long story short, man, these EPWs were getting hit all the time by these enemy mortars dropping into the prison, you know, because I mean they're out there. They're not in, you know, bunkers and stuff like that. They're in these holding cells and you know, they're trying to hit us walking to the chow hall, but they're killing on many occasions. They're killing their own people. So, anyways, because Abu Ghraib came up, I wanted to share that little tidbit from back in the day.
Well, someone said they're going to blame the drone operator on this one. If Congress has shown us anything, no, they'll get a dog catcher assistant to blame on this one on. So, no, it comes too high up, and I think that's well known. So,
no, it'll come down to this. This is my prediction when they grill General Milley. Everybody from one party will say he's our savior and the greatest person to ever wear 4 stars. I mean, Nimitz and Halsey were just, you know, amateurs compared to this guy.
Yeah.
You know, and the other party will convince you he's the worst guy since Benedict Arnold. Matter of fact, Benedict Arnold was a true stand-up guy compared to this asshole.
Yeah, right. That's the polarization. Yeah.
Well, all he had to do was look straight out into the camera and say he's interested in learning about transgenders in the military, right?
Hey, you got a question? What's EPW? Sorry, we throw around acronyms here, us military guys. That's an enemy prisoner of war. When you hear POW, that's prisoner of war. That's ours. EPW is theirs. Okay. Yeah.
Well, guys, we are about 10 mics out from ending on where we ended last time. So we can start wrapping this up. And to finish this up, I just want to mention that the 40th anniversary of One Shepherd's coming up next week. And very excited. We got helo insertions. We got mass. Doc can brief us on the current numbers, but it's going to be a massive event. And, man, talk about, like, force-on-force gloriness. This is shaping up. The only way we can make this better is probably vehicles on the ground, but maybe that will be for the 50th anniversary. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we've got a few. I mean, they've definitely got some mutts and some deuce and a halves and unimogs, but, you know, so things like that.
And the EM50.
Oh, don't forget the EM50, man. Now that thing, I'm surprised how many troops that can hold. But, yeah, so we've got this thing coming up. I know it's something like 105, 110 warriors. When you throw in staff and everybody else, my God, I think the steaks and the beers will be feeding something to the nature of 125, 130 people. So we're talking a real good showing, just absolutely our largest event ever. As you said, helos locked on. And so we'll be out there for the whole entire 7 days plus. So we're looking forward to that. And so my question is, are we going to try, and I know this is a big question, put you on the spot here, Brent, are we going to try and do a Monday night show from the FOB?
I don't think we can pull it off just because I know the signal there is not the greatest.
What got you covered on that, Brent? I got the comm set up for that.
Really? Well, then that might be
I
pretty
can
cool.
tell you, he's done using my setup. He's been able to do some video conferences from there, so I think we can pull this off.
I think we can do this. We can do this through one of the Prick 77s if you just find it.
I'll hook that baby up to a Grau 39 on a landline. Oh my God, we'll just we'll all be on TA1s and we'll just like phone in that way.
Absolutely, there you go. I knew you guys could do it.
Well, that would be pretty interesting if we can pull that off. So
I think we can. I think we can. Mm-hmm.
There'll at least be 3 of us all in one shot.
Maybe make it tentative. Make it tentative.
Yes, definitely
There you
tentative.
All right, so that's what we've got coming up next week. But I do want to say that I'll also be supporting Les's Polaris Training and Simulation Division come November, right around Veterans Day. They'll be having the MGM Scout Simex. And I'm going to let him tell you more about it, but I will definitely be directly supporting that. So I'm excited about that too.
All right, everybody, with a segue like that, segue on over to www.polaristussd.com and look under the simulations page, and you'll see an entry for MGM Scout. And what we're doing with the MGM Scout exercise, it starts on a Friday evening, goes through till Sunday morning. It is an immersive FTX done with the Miles 2000 system. We've got two forces pitted against each other: the People's Social Democracy of Bukhan versus the Republic of Nanham, and there are going to be fights in the simulated DMZ. The Bukhan forces are going to be coming down from the north, trying to penetrate into Namhan territory and punish them for not getting into the fold. And Namhan is going to stop them dead in their tracks. We're going to be holding this out at the Echo Valley Training Center in West Virginia. It's a wonderful training area. Got lots of terrain, lots of wooded areas, lots of areas to have big fights in. Everybody gets signed up. It's going to be a blast. If you can't make it to the 40th, you can make it to MGym Scout.
You're up, Bruce.
Apparently, I'm the center of attention here, but guys, I'm going to completely default to these other gentlemen. I don't have anything as a closing thought. I think that I expressed my views on these issues, just like as much as I could, and I'm just going to stand by my previous comments, and I'm going to relieve my time over to these other fine gentlemen because they have a lot more important stuff to say than I do.
He's on his honeymoon. That's what that was all about. He's like, I'm getting back to business. What's important? You guys just keep talking.
I literally, like, she's like, you give these guys 2 hours and you give me 15 minutes. What gives?
Wow, if you guys joined this late, Bruce just got married on Saturday, so congratulations to him. It was an awesome wedding, and I'm very happy for them. And she makes him absolutely happy. So
she does.
Yeah, I want to adjust this one comment off to the side real quick. Shane K asks, can I come to One Shepherd just to be a bad guy for one day? Shane, you want to come for the whole thing. If you come for just one day, you'll want so much more. You'll regret it that you didn't come and do the whole thing. Sorry about that, Brent.
No, you're all right.
Can I jump in there? There was another one that says, hey, Brent, do you run any training programs, Brent? And I'm like, well, he's a black hat at One Shepherd. So.
Yeah, I was just about to talk about that. So to address that, I think it was CB that commented that he asked if I had any military training programs or anything. No, I don't need to. That's what One Shepherd's all about, guys. If you haven't watched the videos I've posted, I've documented essentially One Shepherd from day one of me going there to now. And I even did a 3-part series that essentially summarizes what your experience is, from the basic warriors course, if you're brand new there, to the situational training exercise, to the final field training exercise at the end of, which is the ultimate end culminating event of every One Shepherd semester. And it's just a phenomenal program, guys. I've driven all the way up to Missouri for Alpha Company events. I've flown out to West Virginia for Bravo Company events. That's how much I believe in the program. And subsequently, went from being a green hat instructor to a black hat instructor there. So it's a great organization. And I mean, as far as if you're looking for small unit leadership, if you've never been in charge of a fire team or a squad, if you're looking for that leadership, guys, it's a excellent leadership training academy. If you're looking for training and small unit tactics, it's an excellent small unit tactics training facility. I mean, it's the whole package, and the fighting is force on force training. You're going up against a peer threat, and that's what we should be doing. Last stream, I talked about fighting against, if you're Army or Marine infantry and you're going to the field, you need to be training against a peer threat. Well, One Shepherd, it is exactly a peer threat. I mean, you're going up against guys with MBGs, you're going up against guys with thermals, and you're using Miles' laser engagement system, which allows us to, engage each other at, real combat engagement ranges. Not to take anything away from like paintball or airsoft and stuff, but you're not engaging people at 500 meters out there like you are with, Miles gear. So, I mean, you're getting the whole gamut of, military training. Whether you're still in like me in the reserves, or hell, on active duty taking leave for that matter, or you've gotten out, I'm telling you, this is a wonderful hidden gem. So I encourage each and every one of you to check it out. Damn, I just got on a One Shepherd pedestal, and I can't even remember what I was going to close this conversation out with. But in any event, yeah. So I don't think there's any slots left for the 40th, right? Nope, all sold out. So you can look forward to future semesters, or you can check Les's organization for the MGM Scouts training. They're going to be using Miles also. So same principal concept. You're just not getting that small unit leadership aspect that One Shepherd provides. But anyway, congratulations to Bruce once again.
Congrats, Bruce.
Thank you guys, and thank all you viewers for thanking me and telling me it was a big mistake. I appreciate that. Your brutal honesty. I got you. I've been married before. Dude, I totally understand. So we love your honesty here.
I'm telling you, marriage campaign medal with gold star and Lewis second award. Right here on his chest.
That's right. Second time, man. I feel like just a tourist. I've done one tour, but he's multiple tours now.
Yeah.
So is 3/4 of the Marine Corps, Bruce. So don't worry.
I understand. I told her, I said, if I see Jody texting her, we're gonna have a problem.
All right, guys. Unless one of you have another parting shot, we're done here.
No, I'm good, Brent.
Thanks for watching, fellas. Don't forget to leave a comment.